once again, the idea of paradigm, it's that change of perspective. Our paradigm is our perspective, and so what does that perspective look like? And shift is all about replacing. So where is it in our life that our perspective needs to be replaced? It needs to be changed. Jesus sets the foundation here in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. His greatest kind of treatise, his discourse, his manifesto, whatever you choose to call it. Jesus comes at this place and he sets this foundation really for what his ministry is all about. It's about the coming of the kingdom. And we think about kingdom and it's like, all right, and these guys didn't know what to do with the concept of kingdom because it's like, well, where's your, I don't know, your palace? Where's your throne? And they're like, he's like, you got it mixed up. And they're like, well, when you get your throne, buy 2 extra chairs because we'd like to sit on either side of you. And Jesus is like, you don't have it figured out. That's not what this kingdom is. Okay, well then let's make it a political, a kingdom with a military power. Because these Romans are killing us, literally, and let's move on where we can get this space where we have this kingdom now established, and we're going to take it by force. And Jesus is like, well, there's force involved. There's the power of the Holy Spirit, but it's not the military force you're thinking of. It's not going to be with weapons. It's not going to be with strength. It's a different kind of kingdom. And so off of that foundation here, Jesus sets the core of what it looks like for life in his kingdom. And I encourage you, if you haven't read those 3 chapters, just sat down and read them, I encourage you to just spend a couple minutes this week and read through 5, 6, and 7, because Jesus is laying this foundation of what his kingdom is all about. It's a kingdom that starts inside and works itself out. So chapters 5 and 6 are all about the internal work that Jesus wants to do. It's about heart transformation. He gets a little uptight because he's like, I can see some of you are trying to live the kingdom from the outside and work yourself in. Anybody ever done that before? If I look the part, then I have the part. And Jesus is like, yeah, I'm not as concerned about how you look. I'm not as concerned about what the appearance is. I'm really concerned about what the heart is and how this kingdom of mine is working itself from the inside, from your heart, and working itself out. And so I'm inviting you into this place, and I'm inviting you into this space where all of a sudden you can live life in the kingdom because it's an internal work that works itself out. And so chapters 5 and 6 of Matthew are filled with all kinds of thoughts about how this thing works itself from the inside and works itself out, and you got to get there. But now we move into chapter 7, and as we move into chapter 7, Jesus is going to set some foundation here that as he sets this, it's now going to move a little bit into our relationship with others. See, that was funny. And so... But I got to stop being distracted. Okay, so as he moves into 7 here, he's now working into this space where it's like, this is about our relationship with other people. See, this is about your relationship with God. This is about your relationship with the kingdom. This is about your relationship as I work and do the work on the inside out. And now it's like, now this is what this looks like. And so our big idea today, and we'll get there, we're somewhere else at the moment, but our big idea today is simply this: the way you treat others says more about you than it does about them. There's something that Jesus wants to bring out here when we talk about treating others and how that looks. Another way to say this is simply this: the root of the action is in the attitude. The root of the action is in the attitude. As we begin to treat others, and what does this relationship look like? Jesus is like, hey, it's still an inside job, but this inside job is now going to play itself out in some very practical ways in how you relate to others. See, Jesus wants to do this transforming in our hearts that goes way beyond this behavioral modification plan. How many of you have ever tried to change your own behavior to a point of transformation? How many of you have tried to change somebody else's behavior to the point of transform? That's more like it. I mean, I'm okay, but how often do we live life where we're trying to transform behavior, we're trying to change behavior, we're trying to modify behavior, and we hope that that behavioral modification from the outside works itself in towards transformation. And Jesus is like, that's not what's going to happen here. Jesus is inviting us into a life where we're not acting out of a life that doesn't have this source internally. The attention Jesus moves now, it's like, how is it that we choose to treat others? Think for a minute about the people that are closest to you. Done? I mean, who's on the list? There might be some family, there might be some children, there's some friends, maybe some coworkers, some neighbors, some kind of a friendship you've developed over the years. You think about those people. Do you ever find yourself trying to control and manage those relationships? Sure. That's how it rolls because someone else is trying to do that to you. And it's like there's this continual struggle of controlling and managing relationships. Sometimes for those that are closest to us, we might do it through blame. Sometimes we do it through judgment. Sometimes, do you ever have a wonderful solution for someone else's life? I really know how you could fix things. I mean, let me tell you. And we get into that space of like wanting to fix somebody else's problems. And if we really want to help those close to us and we have this desire to live the life that Jesus is calling to, there comes moments relationally where we have to choose to give up control. And that's hard because there's certain relationships where it's like the last thing I want to do is give up control in this relationship. Because I feel like if I have control, I'm going to be able to fix it, or I'm going to be able to solve it, or I'm going to be able to provide a solution here. And as we step into this section of the Sermon on the Mount, it opens up with a verse that is most quoted and most misquoted, and it's simply that. Do not judge others, and you will not be judged. Who's heard that before? I was looking at something this week and kind of prepping, and someone had I guess it would be just a little meme or something, whatever they call those. But it was like a picture, and it was like a picture of Matthew chapter 7, and all the words were crossed off except for that version. It just said, judge not. And all the rest of the words were gone. Because we live in a world where it's like, this is not the most popular topic. You ever hear somebody say, hey, don't judge me? I have kids that say that to me. I'm like, come on, I'll show you. I'll show you what it looks like to be now. But I mean, we hear that phrase. And sometimes we feel like we have the gift where we want to straighten other people out. That's my spiritual gift. My spiritual gift is straightening you out. And so let me exercise and let me grow in my gifting. Huh? Do you not ever feel that way? Like do you have someone in your life that's their spiritual gift? To try to straighten you out? Don't raise your hand sitting next to your parent. That is their job right. Put that hand down. That is their job right now. That is their job. But I mean, you think about that and what the challenge is around just that simple thought, well, I'm going to straighten them out. I don't know. If we live with the truth that everyone is created in God's image, these moments where we feel that need to step in and to straighten out can easily move to the place where we need to stop and we need to check our attitude. We need to check what's going on. What is the why behind that? Why do I feel that need to straighten you out? Why do I feel that need? See, when we look at that first verse, we have to see what's not said. It doesn't say that those who are Jesus followers shouldn't hold any opinions about right and wrong. Later in chapter 7, Jesus is going to talk about the dogs and the pigs. He's going to talk about watch out for the false prophets. He's going to say, hey, there's fruit, there's good fruit, there's bad fruit. Those are all judgment statements. Those are all statements where there's like, so it's not like he's taking this away, like you can never do this. That's not what's happening here. What it is simply this. We're called to show unconditional love, but not unconditional approval. And there is a tension there. There is a tension in that space right there. Unconditional love versus unconditional approval. We don't have time to, but that's the sticking point right there. But how does this command of judge not, how does this get broken? I think it gets broken when we think of the worst of others. Our first thought is the worst. I think when we only speak to others of their faults. You have any of those friends in your life? We're going to talk about that in a minute. When we judge an entire life only by its worst moments. How many of you would like to be judged by your worst moments? You haven't had any worst moments. You're only 12. So put that hand down. No, but I mean, we judge sometimes. We judge the hidden motives of others. We think we know why they're doing something. When we judge others without considering ourselves in the same circumstance. There's so many places when we judge others without being mindful that we ourselves will be judged. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 13, go back and read those love verses this week. But in verse 7, just simply it says, love is a safe place of shelter, for it never stops believing the best for others. Love never takes failure as defeat, for it never gives up. I mean, what a great line there. See, we have to be careful because it's easy to step into a place of unhealthy judgment. I mean, think about those places that are so easy to fall into, about how you can separate things and you can put things into categories. You have to be careful what things you approve and the kinds of people that you prefer and the opinions begin to hold about other people. Have you ever had someone come up to you with an opinion of you that you weren't aware that you had? Huh? Like my natural resting face is somewhat grumpy looking. I mean, I have to tell myself constantly, smile, smile, smile. And then when I forget to think about that, I just kind of go into a real serious look. And I'm not serious. It's just, so people come up to me and they're like, why are you so mad at me? I'm like, I hadn't even been thinking about you, but I appreciate your concern that I would be mad at you. If I thought about you, I might be. I'm getting actually mad at you right now. But you've drawn some opinion about me just by the look on my face. I can only do so much with this. This is all that God's given me. That's all that God's given you. I can try to smile it. I can shave it a little bit and comb what's on top, what's left that's on top of it. And that's what I got, folks. So if you look at me and I'm looking a little serious, it's like I hadn't thought about smiling. Some of you walk in and you naturally smile. It's awesome. I'm not that person. So, but you know what my opinion of someone that's, man, you're really having a great day. They could be having a rotten day. They just can't stop smiling. It's okay, you know what I mean? But we have that about people. We just draw those opinions. Verse 2 says, for you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. The measure we use on others is the measure God will use on us. It's not so much that we should be moderate in our judging so others will be moderate on us. Rather, it's that we should get rid of these judgmental attitudes lest we ourselves have this space that God brings us into. See, a judgmental attitude excludes us from God's pardon. Why? Because we have an unbroken spirit. We're coming into it without a spirit of humility, and you have to ask yourself, am I okay with God applying the standard that I'm applying to someone else, of him applying that to me? See, there's a tension. Here's another tension point. There's a tension point between a judgmental spirit and moral apathy. See, there's a tension there, and we live in a world right now that's probably more around moral apathy. And so Jesus isn't calling us to either of these. Jesus isn't calling us to a judgmental spirit, and he's not calling us to moral apathy. Both of those approaches are wrong. Couple quick examples. Doctor brings a diagnosis to you. Are they being judgmental? No, we live in a world that doesn't want a diagnosis. That's really where we live. We live in that kind of world. The doctor brings you a diagnosis. Hey, you have X. Well, thank you. It's good to know. Now what am I going to do about X? How do I find a solution and some healing around this diagnosis of X? Great. It's good to know. The doctor wasn't being judgmental. The doctor was providing a diagnosis. See, we live in a world that they're confused at this point. They don't want a diagnosis. See, if your goal isn't the health of another person, Something is wrong in your attitude and in your heart. See, the goal should always be that of health, that of restoration, that of healing. How about this one? Suppose you're on your way home from church today and you get pulled over for speeding. Anybody been that recently? Anyone got a testimony of speeding? But so then the officer comes up to your window and simply says, hey, do you realize that the posted speed limit is 35 miles an hour and you were going 50? I clocked you on the radar. Your response to the officer can't be, judge not. You cannot roll your window down and just simply say, judge not. I mean, you could, but it's not going to go that well. Judge not that you won't be judged. The officer isn't judging you. The judgment has already been made by a higher authority than you or the officer. The officer didn't set the speed limit. He didn't set 35. He's just following what's already been given to him. The officer simply fulfilling the responsibility of making sure that the standard is enforced. He had nothing, judge not. He's just like, you're going 50. There's no judgment in that statement. That is just you crossed over the line of what was acceptable. I was reading this week some excuses that people gave to an officer for speeding. Anybody had a good one before? So a couple of them I thought were funny. 17-year-old was going 23 miles over the speed limit. The officer asked him why he was going so fast. He looked the officer in the eye and said, because I'm all kinds of stupid. I thought that was, okay, just me. I thought that was funny. Okay, I have two more. So if you didn't like that one, maybe one of these will be better. A guy got pulled over for doing 54 in a 45, and he told the officer, my dyslexia is acting up again. Better. Okay, last one. A young guy was pulled over for doing 65 in a 45. The police officer walked up to him and said, son, I've been waiting for you all day. And the young man replied, I got here as fast as I could. So, oh, sure. It took a while to warm you up, but it's okay. I keep going. So, all right, Jesus wants you to be free of a critical attitude and a critical spirit. So 3 quick things. 3 keys to shifting your attitude on how it is that you treat others. Number 1, check yourself first. Psalm 139. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life. How about praying that every morning? And then go out and face the people you need to face. Whoever it is you need to face, start there. Simple and powerful words. There's a progression of thought that starts with having the courage to, first of all, ask God. Do you have that courage? Search me, O God. That's a bold statement. There takes some boldness for you to say that. Search me, O God. There's that progression of asking and inviting Jesus to do an inspection of your heart. God always already knows, but what he wants to develop in each of one of us is a humility. He wants to develop a humble heart in it. Do you think you're going to him like, hey, search me, oh God? And he's like, whoa, I've never seen that before. Wow, where did that? No, he knows it's our attitude that he's wanting to shift. It's our heart of humility that he's wanting to bring into us. And that's where he comes to in that. Not only is it the fact that he desired that we have to step into that, but it's also, it's that heart of humility to listen to what God is saying. And then not only to hear it, but what then to do with it. It says, lead me along. Follow what God has to say. We can ask him, we can lean into it, but we also have to follow. There's a vulnerability that comes as you choose to check your heart first. And you have to admit that there might be something in there in your heart that needs to change. It might involve allowing others to speak into your blind spots. What do they see as areas that might need to be changed? Throughout this teaching of Jesus, he's continually leading towards the breaking down of the facade that you and I can easily put up that makes it look like we've got it all together. Jesus wrote this in Luke 16. He says, you like to appear righteous in public, but God knows your heart. God knows your heart. Second thought is simply this. Check yourself for double standards. Verses 3 to 5, it says, and why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye, When you can't see past the log in your own eye, hypocrite. First get rid of the log in your own eye, and then you'll see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Is this not a good piece of scripture right here? Because this, I got to grab my board over here. Whoa. All right. So I need someone to come up and help me. You're going to come on up. You're in the front row. You got here late. You had to sit in the front row. That's all right. That's all right. I'm not shaming you. This is judge not. Judge not. Judge not that you were late. And so Jesus now offers you this opportunity. I'll be the guy you better step over just a tad bit. Okay, so not too far. I don't want you falling off the stage. But I mean, here's Jesus. Huh? How's this look on me? So it's like, now if I come over here, I'll go this way so at least I can see where I'm hitting. But if I come over here, hey, let me get that speck in your eye. Hey, you got something over there that's kind of, it's. No, I'll get it. Don't worry, I'll get it for you. I'll get it. Oh, you're worried I'm going to hit you in the head. I can see that. Well, yeah, I would be too. But it's like, I'll get it. Huh? I mean, what does that look like? Thank you. That was it. But I mean, come on. It's like that's how we're rolling. You ever had anybody try to get a speck out of your eye? It's like, they're trying hard. I mean, Jesus paints this picture that's just so illustrative. I mean, I think he's laughing when he says it. Do you have a happy Jesus in your mind? I think he was having a good time. I think he's just like, hey, judge, you same measure, but he's like, hey, think about this. You got a big old piece of wood in your eye. And then you see your friend that's got the little speck over there, and you're like, yeah, let me get that for you. I mean, he had to be like laughing. And so often we're going around like this, and we feel like nobody sees our plank. And we're like, man, I sure got that plank hidden. And they're like, what's with the wood in your eyes? What's with that plank in your eyes? And you're just walking around as if nothing's happening. The plank is just, you're clobbering people everywhere you go. Like you're just a big pot. You're just like everywhere you go, like, oh, hello, bam, bam. You hit people in the side of the head, and they're just like, I don't want to be around you. You are driving me nuts with that piece of wood hanging off the front of your head. And you're like, oh, really? There's wood there? I didn't notice. Well, of course you didn't notice. That's what a blind spot is. You need some friends in your life that can say, hey, dude, you got a big old piece of wood right there. I need to help you with that. I get there's some specks going on, but there's totally a blind spot. One of the great illustrations of Scripture is the story of David. David had a moment of absolute, he crashed and burned. He has abuse of power, abuse of all kinds of things. He takes in this lady that's married. I mean, there's a lot of story you could get behind it. Bottom line is this woman, Bathsheba, becomes pregnant with David's child. She's a married woman, and David's like, well, I'm going to fix this. So he has her husband murdered in battle, and I mean, it's an ugly scene. I mean, you don't have to watch TV. This is in the Bible. This is reality Bible. And so he's in there, and he's doing this, and then all of a sudden, this guy named Nathan, who had the ability to speak to David, and he's like, David, let me tell you this story. There's this guy who had one sheep. He had one sheep, and it was kind of a family pet. This sheep would come in, and it would eat off their table. And anybody have a dog like that? Yeah, I know. He was just part of our family. And his neighbor was a rich man, had a whole flock of sheep. But the rich man had a friend come over, and he came over to the other man's house, and he killed his one sheep to feed his friend. David's like, oh, we got to go after that guy. And Nathan simply said this, you're that man. You're that man. You're the man who killed the one sheep. And all of a sudden, captured in that story, David's like, you know what? I've been living with a double standard. I've been living with a double standard, and he recognized that at that point. See, the truth is the speck needs to come out. The speck does need to come out, but you got to deal with the log first. What does Jesus say? He says, first, Get rid of the log in your eye. First, there's a first step. So, man, it is so hard to be, and none of us are without the log. And so it's like, start here. Search my heart, oh God. Let me not live with a double standard. Let me recognize what it looks like to get this out of my eye. And it's looking for those places where you feel like you get to set the standard. There's only one person that gets to set the standard. It's God. And that's the ultimate person who gets to be involved with that. See, the trouble often comes when there's a feeling that a person is setting one standard for themselves and one standard for someone else. None of us appreciate that. It's the old cliche. Do as I say, not as I do. No one wants to follow that. See, it's a very different thing when a humble brother or sister points out your sin. See, the prideful person wants to put you down. The humble person wants to lift you up. There's a place of restoration. There's a place of healing. Last thought, keep your attitude based on the grace that you have received. Start with that. Recognize the grace that you've received. Paul writes these words, "But God's amazing grace has made me who I am. And his grace to me was not fruitless. In fact, I worked harder than all the rest, yet not in my own strength, but God's. For his empowering grace is poured out upon me." How many of you are thankful for grace? Yes, that's grace and truth go hand in hand. So often we want to lead with truth, and God's like, I'd like to lead with grace. There's a tension. There's a tension between grace and truth because how many of you lean towards truth? Yeah, it's black and white, and you're like, I'm on the truth factor. Yeah, that's where I live. And some of you, how many of you lead all like grace, but you forget about the truth? I mean, see, there's a tension that comes inside of that. It's harder to be harsh with others when you know it's only by grace that you've been saved, that you've been transformed, that you've been changed. The words of Matthew 7:2, again, the standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. You see, the standard gets set in the right place when you realize that the gift that God has given you through his grace, that becomes at the foundation. We're all in that space of like, what does this look like to live and experience God's grace, but then also to live in a space where you and I have the opportunity to speak into each other's lives. There's a place for that. This isn't like no more conversations that might be anything challenging or difficult. No more conversations that speak about, hey, here's an area I've noticed. Maybe there's a space for you to grow. None of that. We have to be open to and receptive to like, how do we allow each other to speak into one another's lives? Sometimes you get it and it's like, well, I didn't really expect it to come from them. But God, what is it that you're trying to speak to me through them? See, our heart has to move to a place of receptivity. Our heart has to be at a place where we can stop and we can receive. Sometimes, you ever gotten some advice from someone with a big log in their eye? It's not the easiest. But you know, my prayer is usually like, okay, God, I feel like I see a log over there, and I'm sure there's more than one speck and probably another log in my eye. But what would you like me to receive from that? So there's a humility that has to be developed in all of our hearts. There's a humility that has to come when it's like, I am willing to choose to live in healthy relationships. And sometimes you're going to approach something and it's like, that was an interesting way to come after that. But that's okay. I'm going to do the same. And it's somewhere in that ebb and flow of relationship that we learn kind of what that dance is of like living in a healthy place. Living in that space where you and I are encouragement. You and I lift each other up. If the ultimate goal that I know that you want for me is restoration, that you want for me is to lift me up, I need to be ready to receive it. And the same goes for you. There's people in your life where it's like you need to allow people to speak in. None of us are beamless. None of us have gotten rid of the wood. And we all have some specks, and we all have some spaces there. But what does it look like for us to search our own hearts? What does it look like to recognize that we live by one standard? And what does it look like for us to just kind of come into that space where we begin it with the foundation of God's grace? That's what he desires for us. And so as we wrap this up today, simple question, where do you need an attitude adjustment? Come on up, I'm ready. No, whoa, sorry. I'm kidding. But I mean, sometimes we all need a little something there. A little attitude adjustment. Because that's how we live. Jesus is like, hey, I want to give you an attitude adjustment. I want to give you an attitude adjustment that brings you to a place where it's like, you know what? Yeah, there's a tension in relationships. There's a tension in what it looks like. But as my kingdom gets birthed in your life, as this moves beyond behavioral modification into true transformation, hey, are you going to let me come in and adjust your attitude a little bit? Because what I desire for you is healthy relationships. I desire for you to live well with one another. And it comes out in this space where it's like, you know what? This is an opportunity that Jesus has invited us to.